The most dangerous manipulations occur not through brute force, but through calculated psychological operations, so refined they bypass conscious detection entirely. These are not the crude machinations of cartoon villains, but the sophisticated strategies of those who understand human vulnerability at its most fundamental level. Where physical wounds heal with time, these invisible assaults on the psyche leave scars that reshape perception itself. Gaslighting operates as a slow erosion of reality, a gradual dismantling of one's trust in their own mind. The technique derives its name from Patrick Hamilton's 1938 play Gaslight, where a husband systematically manipulates his wife into doubting her perceptions. But modern implementations have evolved far beyond theatrical tropes. Contemporary gaslighters employ micro-denials, small, barely noticeable contradictions that accumulate into profound disorientation. A partner might insist they never made plans you distinctly remember discussing. A boss could claim you misunderstood instructions they deliberately gave vaguely. The genius of this approach lies in its deniability. Each instance seems trivial enough to dismiss as forgetfulness, yet the aggregate effect leaves victims chronically second-guessing themselves. Neuroscience reveals why this proves so devastating. When our memories are repeatedly challenged, the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, actually begins altering its recordings of events. The victim isn't simply doubting their recollection. Their neural architecture is being rewritten under psychological siege. Negging, a term originating from pickup artistry, but now prevalent across all forms of manipulation, represents a more insidious form of emotional sabotage. Unlike overt insults that trigger immediate defensiveness, negging delivers carefully calibrated micro-criticisms wrapped in plausible deniability. That dress is interesting. Most people couldn't pull that off. Appears complimentary, while subtly planting self-doubt. You're surprisingly articulate for someone with your background. Smuggles condescension behind apparent praise. The psychological mechanism at work here exploits our innate negativity bias, the well-documented phenomenon where the human brain weights negative input 3 times more heavily than positive. What makes negging particularly pernicious is its drip-feed nature. Individual comments seem insignificant, but their cumulative effect systematically dismantles self-esteem while keeping the victim hooked on intermittent validation. Intermittent reinforcement operates on the same principle that makes slot machines addictive. Unpredictable rewards create obsessive behavior patterns. Psychologist B.F. Skinner demonstrated this phenomenon with his famous rat experiments, showing animals would press levers most frantically when rewards came randomly rather than consistently. Human manipulators apply this science with chilling precision in relationships and workplaces alike. The partner who oscillates between affection and indifference. The boss who alternates praise with unexplained coldness. These patterns trigger dopamine-driven craving cycles, far more powerful than consistent treatment could produce. Brain imaging studies reveal that intermittent rewards light up neural pathways associated with addiction, explaining why victims persist in toxic situations long after logic would dictate departure. The cruel brilliance of this tactic lies in its self-perpetuating nature. The very unpredictability that causes pain also creates the desperate hope that the next interaction might bring relief. Triangulation introduces a third party into what should be a two-person dynamic, not through honest mediation, but as a psychological wedge. This tactic manifests when a manipulator deliberately compares you to others. My ex never complained about this. Shares confidential information to create artificial alliances. Even your friend thinks you're being unreasonable, or cultivates rivalries to maintain control. The psychological power stems from our deeply ingrained social comparison instincts, the automatic human tendency to evaluate ourselves relative to others. By controlling these comparisons, the manipulator shapes your self-perception without direct confrontation. Workplace studies show this technique frequently appears in toxic leadership, where managers pit employees against each other to prevent unified resistance. The most sophisticated practitioners employ imagined rather than real third parties, vague references to what people are saying or how others see you, creating the destabilizing effect without any actual external input required. The bait and switch personality constitutes one of the most psychologically destabilizing manipulations because it attacks our fundamental need for consistency in others. After presenting an idealized version of themselves, the bait, the manipulator gradually reveals their true nature, the switch, yet with just enough residual traces of their original persona to keep the victim hoping for its return. This creates cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced when holding contradictory beliefs. Rather than accepting they've been deceived, victims often double down on efforts to recover the initial illusion, trapped in what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy of emotional investment. The technique proves particularly effective because it exploits our brain's pattern completion tendencies. Having recognized what appears to be a coherent personality initially, we continue projecting that coherence even as contradictory behaviors emerge. These psychological warfare tactics share a common thread. They exploit fundamental operating systems of human cognition and emotion. Where physical coercion meets resistance, these invisible manipulations bypass our defenses by hijacking the very mechanisms designed for social bonding and self-preservation. The greatest danger lies not in their initial impact, but in their ability to rewrite victims' neural pathways over time, creating psychological dependencies that outlast the relationships themselves. Understanding these strategies provides not just protection, but a roadmap to reclaiming autonomy in a world where the most damaging weapons leave no visible marks. The silent war for control of the mind continues daily in homes, workplaces, and institutions. Its battlefields are private conversations and subtle glances rather than overt confrontations. Its weapons are words and implications rather than fists. And its casualties often don't realize they've been wounded until the damage has already reshaped their sense of self. This is psychological warfare in its most advanced form, invisible, deniable, and devastatingly effective.